as you know, we began this process looking at sort of the background of advanced air mobility and what that means and that kind of thing. And uh, essentially we're talking about new aircraft types that are vertical takeoff and landing, whether electrical or conventional, and in some cases drones as well. Um, There's also a supporting infrastructure of vertiports and charging facilities, and then all the other things, whether it's terminal buildings, if it's passengers, maintenance, facilities and services, that type of thing. Um, okay, the we talked a little bit in the early going about what those visions were and expectations. And there was a lot of enthusiasm back in 2016 and before that, batteries would be the future and that type of thing. And between 2017 and 2024, that 7-year period, there was zero gain in battery efficiency. Some of the groups back then assumed that there would be an 8% per year gain. That was the NASA group and um, Elevate, Uber Elevate. Um, Nevertheless, there's been, roughly 14 billion already invested in this. And, some of the key players, that we mentioned here, Joby, Archer, Volocopter, turns out Lilium yesterday declared bankruptcy. So, it is a volatile business. They couldn't get backing. They couldn't get anyone to back the $100 million loans that they had. Um, so there's issues in who is going to carry on. It's possible they restructure, they get financing and continue. But there's many others of these. The shift, has been from batteries to hybrid systems. And a hybrid system is not necessarily hydrogen. It just means a multiple power source and, more than one. So, you know, and hydrogen is, something that is being looked at very seriously. A lot of industry collaborators, NASA and the Air Force. The Air Force has a group called AFWorks. They're working on Digital Operations Center for AAM. In Europe, the EU Aviation Safety Agency is working with Volocopter and hopefully Lilium for certification. And then the FAA is working with the Air Force to adapt the National Airspace System to AAM. A question came up on, some of the stuff as to, would this apply to Dover Air Force Base and where is AFWorks? And it turns out AFWorks has got 3 hubs. One is in Las Vegas, one is in Austin, and one is in Washington, D.C. Um, and someone from the military is here, and when we open it up for discussion, we can find out if there's anything that is happening at Dover. As far as the regulatory advancements and hurdles, there's challenges, of course. Certification and safety is a big thing. Um, how do you integrate these into the airspace? And there's going to have to be an upgrade of the entire airspace system, particularly if these are autonomous vehicles, um, eventually, running without pilots. Those are all going to have to be programmed into the airspace. And there's going to have to be, some method of public acceptance and support in order to get it actually financially feasible. Um, a lot of stuff going on in the regulatory areas. There is international collaboration. FAA is jumping in, and there are pathways for certification of these vehicles. Okay, so that, you know, that's a very quick summary of, I don't know, 20 or 30 pages of report, but I thought it might be a good idea to just get your input on your view of what is going on that you're understanding with, um, the AAM. I guess, we can open that up if that's okay.
Yeah, and I just want to add that I've everyone that's part of the committee, I've permitted to be a panelist in the meeting. So you should
Okay,
have the ability to freely unmute and speak whenever you want to chime in.
excellent.
Hey Randall, thanks for this is Greg Mand.
Yes.
Thanks so much for the deck the document that Austin. Thank you for sharing it last week, and I reviewed it. In my experience, and even in the last couple of months, I was going to mention the Lillian bankruptcy, which was pretty much everybody's expecting the last 6 weeks. But there's two big things. I think we're very much in the what I'd say is the trough of disillusionment right now.
Right.
Tons of money has
Yes.
been poured into this AAM space, and there's a lot of companies that are shaking out. There's a lot of challenges, regulatory hurdles, things like that. The FAA, I believe you noted, had a huge ruling last week as far as the flight, the requirements for piloted operations and things like that. And similar things are happening on the vertiport side as well, to basically saying we don't need new regulations for vertiports. So that's one thing I've seen in the last 4 months since we last met. The only other comments I wanted to make, which just in my opinion, and reading the document in the background that you provided, Randall,
Yes.
is two big pieces as it relates to Delaware. I think the electrical infrastructure piece is incredibly important. Incredibly important. I know this from some of the consulting work I'm doing. Figuring out that piece of the puzzle, and I don't know if anyone in this group, and I'll throw it out there, is related to Delmarva or the other electrical connected we have here, cooperative we have here in Delaware. But having someone from the electrical side of the house be part of this discussion, I think is very important, number one. And the second point that I will make discussion wise, which I've seen the last couple of months, is the passenger eVTOL flights, things from DC to the beaches in the summer and stuff like that. That is all cool and it's all sexy. That is much further down the road. And I'd rather see Delaware as a state, particularly given our geographic location, focus more on the B2B applications as far as cargo, logistics, the drone use that way. That's my own personal opinion for what I'm seeing. And the last comment I'll make, and obviously Dover's here, I know Jason's on the call as well, from the National Guard, is tremendous number of AAM companies are realizing that there's a long time frame to commercial viability, but going through AFWorks and other DoD related entities is the fastest way to get proof of concept, to get funding, and to actually get these vehicles out there and flying right now. So that's just I'll just say my opening comments. I'll let others speak as well. But thank you again, Randall, for that. The work you did in the background, Doc, was really helpful for us to see the situation here in Delaware.
Great, great, Greg. And we are going to do a segment on the grid that's coming up. So I think we'll have a chance to talk a little more in depth about that. But I do appreciate what you're saying, and the fact that some things are a lot further off than what they thought. And I like the way that you categorized it as disillusionment, because there is there is a trough where reality does set in, and you know the the sale of the concept involved a lot of stretched imaginations, and and that got a lot of money involved. And now, there is this thing of, okay, we have to build them, we have to certify them, we have to get the grid going. There's just a whole lot of things that have to happen to make it work. So, and I really appreciate your view on this, but this is the first of four, sort of discussion points in our
Yep, absolutely. I want to give
concept.
others a chance, so I just sort of dumped everything there. My apologies, but
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else on this?
Yeah, I got
This
something.
is
First of all, Austin, is there a way to show who's on right now? It's okay if it's not. I'll go ahead and talk. One of the things. What's that? Introduce yourself. Oh, my name is Jim Herrera with All Azimuth Solutions, AAM consultant. Previously, in a previous life, I worked with the FAA and NASA and helped conceptualize the initial framework for advanced air mobility. One of the things I think that the industry initially focused on was that UAM use case. That's the intercity transportation in and around urban areas, alleviating that road congestion. But then as this trade space matured, they started exploring other use cases. One of them is regional air mobility. And I think regional air mobility is really going to be the accelerator for all the other use cases. Now, the cargo logistics supply, that's going to be in there, the middle mile delivery. But the regional air mobility use case is connecting essentially all those existing airports. It would require less infrastructure support because you're leveraging this nationwide network of over 5,000 airports and connecting these traditionally underserved communities that have been underserved by aviation, right? So using electrically powered aircraft. Now, these aircraft would take out, once you take out that 40% overhead for the fuel costs and the required maintenance, now you have a viable use case that can be expanded upon. And I think that the regional air mobility, at least for Delaware, is a very viable use case in the near future. And like I said, would require less infrastructure.
That's great. That's really good insight.
And
Anyone
another
else?
thing,
Yeah,
in case you haven't heard, the FAA is now standing up an AAM integration office to be modeled like the UAS integration office. So it's going to be in their line of business under ABS, which is the aviation safety. I don't know if we have anybody on from the FAA, but that's an interesting. That'll be an interesting topic to discuss, I think.
Absolutely.
Hey, Randall, this is Bob Bryant. I was at the NBAA conference in Las Vegas, or convention, exposition, whatever you want to call it, in Las Vegas. And of course, you know, what I thought were two of the leading manufacturers in these AAM vehicles were there. Joby, which has an incredible product to look at and sit inside, and Lilium. I was surprised to read this morning that yesterday they filed bankruptcy. They had a mock-up of their 30 duct engine aircraft there. And, all of them were, enthusiastic, certainly willing to ask questions. My question to Joby was how much time does it take to recharge this thing? And the response was 30 minutes for a full charge, less than 10 minutes for an 80% charge. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd like to, wait to see if that, can be proven.
Wow.
But the one thing that they did not talk about, because they really don't know, acquisition cost and operating costs. And of course, just like the airlines, operating costs go beyond acquiring the airplane, hiring the pilot, paying for the fuel or the electric, paying for the mechanic. Operating costs also include, the office complex or whatever, where the company is going to be based, accounting departments, legal departments, everything like that, office supplies. And whoever the gentleman was who had said that regional transportation is a ways off, I think is right. The small package delivery, that's another topic to discuss about how and where drones are going to be able to deliver my order from Rite Aid or my pizza or whatever. Interestingly, when I was working for a company called GCR, and I think Randall, you're familiar with them.
Oh
We
yeah.
were we were a contractor with the FAA to train FAA airport inspectors and state airport inspectors on how to properly inspect airports. And a lot of that topic was the airport master record and the 5010 form. And I asked Drew Goldsmith, who's the FAA representative in charge of the 5010 program, if every property owner who wants to have a drone package delivered to their home address, are they going to have to submit an FAA 5010 form with the exact latitude and longitude numbers of where that drone is going to land? And I remember Drew laughing at me and saying, oh God, he hopes not. But,
Right.
There's a lot of, we're in the infancy of this program, of this, of this product, of this service. And, as far as airports are concerned and using them as the initial staging point for operations of the passenger carrying capabilities. I mean, we've got all the pavement in the world. I'm sure later we'll talk about the electrical requirements. That's that's something else that's going to be that's going to be difficult to provide or whatever. But I will say one last thing about this Joby product. It's bigger than the pictures lead you to believe. It's a pretty big aircraft. 6 engines spinning a 6-bladed propeller that looks about the size of something that you would see on a Piper Meridian type aircraft. They're big. They're big.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there'll be more to discuss as we progress this morning.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. That's very good insight. Anyone else?
A real brief comment. This is Troy Mix at the University of Delaware, and I admit I'm a bit naive on the aviation industry, so this is a big picture comment. When I hear hydrogen, my ears perk up because Delaware is in a hydrogen hub, and there's several $100 million kind of devoted to building out some type of infrastructure that might support a hydrogen economy here and elsewhere around the U.S. in different hubs. And so just scanning through the document, thinking about what the deliverable might look like and what some opportunities might be for Delaware, it seems like maybe there could be opportunities to think through the supply infrastructure from the hydrogen perspective as it might relate to advanced air mobility. Again, that's my big picture observation, putting some dots together.
That's fantastic, because oftentimes we don't, if we're specialized, we can't connect those dots. And so it's great to hear that. Anybody
Jason
else?
Douglas from the Delaware Air Guard. I just wanted to chime in as a scene setter from a kind of the military perspective here. As everybody probably knows, between Dover and Newcastle, we're much bigger airframes than these rotary VTOL type of systems, and we're governed by fairly strict acquisition and sustainment and mission sets. But the mention of AFWERX that was called out a bit earlier, happy to help facilitate within Air Force network connections to help gain access and expertise from some of those specific subject matter experts. This is really a learning opportunity for me to see where industry and state government are interested in going, to see where we can end up supporting in some future space. But mostly I find myself to be a bridge builder and an active listener in a setting like this. So just to kind of set that tone for your Guard folks who are always ready, always there. Thanks.
That's pretty awesome. We definitely need bridge builders, and really this is a forum essentially to assess what's going on, what's going to happen, and how to prepare for it. So again, it would be great to get some of the folks from the Air Force into this as well. And it might, if because we can do this virtually, it may be good in the future to get someone from FAA that has insight into what they're doing into this to kind of give us a direct sort of talk on it. So that'd be my take. Anyone else on this before we move on?
Hey, Randall, if you're interested in having a guest speaker from the FAA, I know some folks, I know some folks who are working in the space within the FAA, as well as the person who's earmarked to take over that AAM office. We might be able to get them in here to present from the FAA perspective.
I think that would be valuable because, again, we could have the best plan in the world, but if FAA can't implement it, it's not going to go. So it would be nice to know where they are, particularly from a timing standpoint. I mean, things always take longer than we hope, and someone from there would probably have a better handle on that. So I think that's a good idea. Anyone else?
Hey, this is Matt Jordan from Dover Air Force Base. I just wanted to comment real quick based on the discussion with drones. According to the FAA, we don't have any. The Dover Air Force Base is a no-go area for drones, and it kind of tapers off. I don't know if you guys have seen the grids for no-go areas for drones, but it goes off base to 100 feet and 200 feet and upwards to 400 feet from there. But as far as the aerial advanced air mobility concept, I have not heard anything about it as it relates to Dover Air Force Base. But of course, I'm not kind of clued in there with what's going on at the Civil Air Terminal right now. I'm not sure what discussions are going on with that.
Hey, Matt, I did read an article, it was in Flying Magazine last summer, and there's discussion about putting in an AM route corridor between Joint Base McGuire and Dover Air Force Base. I don't know where that's at or who we would talk to about that, but that would be an item of interest.
And Matt, I apologize. I didn't know you were on because I was talking about if somebody from Dover was in there. So I apologize for that. Didn't
no,
realize
that's fine. And everybody knows we just recently signed a 50-year joint use agreement, with the state of Delaware for joint use of the airfield here. So we'll look into how that plays out as well. Thank you. Over.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excuse me, Matt. Are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here. I'll be here the whole meeting.
All right, what unit are you with, sir?
436 CE Squadron, Civil Engineering.
Okay, so the Dover Air Force Base has two sides of UAS operations. They have the blue side and they have the red side. Your red side is ran and owned by security forces, and your blue side is ran by your operations support squadron. What I mean by that is that your operations support squadron is operating drones in a positive capacity while your security forces squadron is detecting and neutralizing threats of drones. So if you want to reach out to them, I can email you some contact information for both sides of the house for Dover Air Force Base.
Sure. What would I reach out for them about?
Well, you're saying that you guys aren't operating them, correct?
No.
Okay.
No, we're flying our heavy cargo planes as our primary mission. It's for use of drones. I mean, the Air Force does, like most areas, does use drones for mapping purposes and for security reasons. So I'm not sure about the red and blue side. That's the first I've heard about that. Our security forces does use them in for anti-terrorism force protection, around fence lines or areas that are hard to get to.
Yeah, and under the 99.7 special security instruction, Dover Air Force Base is a no drone zone for, say, civilian operators who want to fly their drones. They can't go in and around Dover Air Force Base. But it doesn't preclude operational units from doing what they need to do, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm sorry. Who am I speaking with?
This is Jim Herrera.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
you're 100% right about that. Yes.
and I'm working in the state of Ohio up in Port Clinton area. And I wrote their concept of operations, and part of it was assembling all the stakeholders within the area. One of them was a Red Horse Squadron, which I believe falls under civil engineering.
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
and there's a guard unit there, Red Horse Squadron, that we were going to leverage within the community of actors that we put together to help construct a vertiport as well as solar charging facilities. That's some of the discussion that's going on, because AAM, it's non-traditional in that it's not just engaging with aviation. It's going to take stakeholders from a whole different set of non-traditional aviation actors.
Yeah. Very true. Yep.
That's good. Any other comments before we move on? Okay. Let's talk about the potential demand for advanced air mobility. The way we looked at it in the paper was to look at the national demand and then sort of break that down to regional and then Delaware, and just kind of went from the large to the more specific. And in the we quoted a number of different forecasts, and depending upon when they were made, some are relevant, others are not, and there's a wide discrepancy in how big these things are. But the national projections of urban air mobility versus regional air mobility, um, they're talking about the addressable market size of between 75 billion to 115 billion in the next 10 or 11 years. The air cargo market is actually larger than the passenger market in that time frame. And then the public services, whether that's medevac or law enforcement, those types of things, there's a much smaller market, but very important because of the life-saving capability and just the protection of the public is involved there. So, I found this Deloitte study that they're looking at how this thing's spreads out, and air cargo is the biggest thing. Passengers stuff doesn't happen until much later. And from my understanding, there's drones are delivering cargo right now in Texas. A company called Zipline is doing stuff with Walmart, I believe, and others. And so there is movement in this air cargo small package delivery already. Another thing that I found, which was sort of interesting, is that the Census Bureau, when we're starting to break this down into, what happens in Delaware, um, it's interesting that commuter information, looking at the demand, um, there's information on how many employees or employed people are leaving, say, in this case, Newcastle County to go to other counties versus coming into the county to work. And so they'll, this thing, you may not be able to read it, but it basically says that, there's like 226,000 people employed in Newcastle County, and there's roughly 77,000 people or 77,800 people coming in from out of that county, either from other states or, even uh, Kent County. And there's also 55,000 people, leaving to go to others. So there's all this, there's 133,500, um, commuters either coming in or going out. And so that gives an idea that, there is this possibility of capturing some small percentage of that at some point with advanced air mobility, which is sort of the original idea for it, was to relieve traffic. Well, it turns out that Delaware, uh, you know, averages about 30.8 hours per year per commuter stuck in traffic. And that happens to rank seventh nationally, just behind California in, um, traffic delays and that kind of thing. And really, if you don't have any traffic delays, things like advanced air mobility don't have a lot of appeal. But if you do and you can save time, there is, at least some functional argument for that. I have talked with a guy that I respect, Peter Schmidt. Um, he's got a company, Transcend, I think is the name of their company. They are they are doing a conventional powered eVTOL. But his take was that even if you could show a financial gain of saving time, it didn't translate into demand. So he was pretty negative on whether this thing would work, from a demand standpoint in passengers. Um, anyway, so there's different opinions on that. But we went ahead and we did an estimate of demand, and looking at urban commuting, we figured that of that 133,000, um, well, no, excuse me, the urban commuting, we estimated 1 to 2%, and that turned into 2,000 to 3,000 daily users. The intercity connectivity, we estimated more, something about 5%, and that was about 6,000 daily trips. We looked at tourism, and the beaches, they get 6 to 7 million people a year. It's possible you could get up to 50,000 converting from that. And again, this is off in the future sometime. The small package delivery thing, though, is actually being demonstrated right now in Texas, and that is for real. And so we estimated that there's roughly 61 million um, small package deliveries in Delaware a year. There might be 64 million, I'm sorry. And that some 1 to 2% of those could be converted to UAS during that time. Same thing with medical logistics. They're dropping off medicine at different places. There's programs I know in Massachusetts and others to demonstrate the feasibility of that with medical drop boxes and things. And so that's something that's going on. And again, the public service that we talked about, the EMS, the law enforcement, disaster, and so forth, hundreds of operations annually there. So given that that's kind of an overview, I wanted to pause and talk about the potential demand and just sort of open that up.
Randall, this is Bob Bryant. You mentioned Texas, and Walmart particularly is already making small package deliveries with drones.
Yes.
Do you have any idea on how Walmart plans and or coordinates those deliveries? I mean, how does Walmart know where to drop the drone or hover the drone and drop the package on some type of tethering line? I mean, do they just type in the address of the receiver and the drone hovers over top and just drops down anywhere? Or like I had mentioned earlier, does the receiver have to give exact pinpoint location, either using latitude and longitude, for the drone to land or to drop the thing? I mean, that's what I'm curious about.
Right. Okay. No, that's a great question, and I do believe that these are all preset locations, but we've got some hands up, so let's start with Jason, and then we'll go to Scott.
Sure. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. This is the first time with this group, and I appreciate allowing some of us to join in. I come from the drone world specifically, kind of more so from the engineering world of consumer drones that are used for corporate applications. But I have a vested interest in this kind of space, so I appreciate you guys having me out and allowing this. With the first off, to address the question with Texas, they are using a zip line system. I posted the path to that company's website in the chat. And there's some videos on their website that kind of talk about how they do their deliveries, how they're started from the loading of the package into the drone, and then how that package gets delivered. There's some pretty specific videos and stuff on their website if you want to go through that to get those details. When it comes to the United States in this space, specifically of the package delivery type stuff, I think that we would be served well to look at internationally what other countries and other areas are doing. Specifically, Switzerland, Germany, and Japan have really taken some great strides in this area as to how this can be done, how it can be done safely, and how those packages can be delivered to the different spaces. So, doing in my own time in this space, Wingcopter, back in April, got approval in Japan to be able to do some deliveries. Matternet in Switzerland, and then forgive me, my German is terrible, so I don't know how to pronounce the German name of the company. Koruschlut. I don't know how to say that. But I think we would be well served in looking internationally and how this is already being done, and try to take some notes from those spaces and attempt to incorporate them into our systems.
Excellent. Scott.
Yeah, thank you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Scott Stoffman, Director of Government Affairs for the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International. AUVSI, we represent members across commercial, civil, defense, small to large, groundwater, air. And so we have members in the eVTOL equipment, OEM space, the infrastructure providing space, as well as a lot of the drone delivery companies that you're mentioning here. We work with all of the Part 135 certificated operators. I'm based in Texas, and so I'm regularly working with both Walmart and the operators on the Key Sites Initiative. And, a lot of the main development that you're seeing happening here in North Texas is because of the Mode C veil and the radar coverage that you have around DFW Airport and that 30-mile radius from there. And so FAA has found sort of fertile ground for environmental approvals, similar safety cases, and that's why you're seeing a lot of movement here in the space. So you've got Zipline, you've got Drone Up, you have Wing, you have Flytrex. Those are all operators that are doing drone delivery in the DFW area, and they are cooperating with each other in a UTM system. So pictures of the airspace essentially telling each other where they're going to be operating. And when it comes to specific delivery locations, end users use the correct apps, whether that's the proprietary app from a company or the Walmart app, to state where they are. And then, I think each company has their own version of onboarding as far as how they assess the property, where they want to deliver or not, and looking for obstructions, whether that's using satellite data or actually sending somebody out to the site based on the number of people that they've got working on it. The other thing that we're working on right now is working with local cities on enabling zoning ordinances, or really working on how they impact the operational sites for the drone delivery companies, as well as considering time, manner, place, noise, and those kinds of things that will come up at the local level versus what is covered by FAA at the federal level around certification and safety of the aircrafts and the operations. So just a little bit more context. If you want to have anybody either FAA side or operator side, I can probably get connections in or get you feedback from them to help influence the discussion that you're having here, as well as on the AAM side if you're looking to operators. We work with most of them.
That's great. That's super. Thank you, Scott. Chris.
Hi, everyone. Chris Kelly here from the Delaware Prosperity Partnership. Appreciate the opportunity to participate in this conversation. Just really want to highlight the importance of that commuter data that you shared. One of the key selling points, I'd say, for Delaware when we're talking to businesses, particularly outside of our market, is that, especially in the northern part of our state, we have a 4-state workforce, a 4-state commuter shed. So any opportunities to highlight that with companies or to capitalize on that regional connectivity, just really excited about that. And, we spend a lot of time kind of dispelling the myth that Delaware is a small state. If you locate your operation in northern Delaware, you're drawing from southern Philly, western New Jersey, and also from eastern Maryland. So that commuter data, it's very real to us. Companies are very excited about it, and it's a huge selling point. One other element that it might be a little further down the line, but I would be intrigued to see how this technology could support it. But one of the challenges we face in Delaware, particularly in Sussex County, is the availability of workers, particularly in service industry jobs, and the housing costs, right, in those communities. So has there been any thought behind basically setting up a system where individuals could live in lower cost areas, but work in those higher cost regions, particularly in the service industry? Would just be interested in your thoughts on that. But again, thank you for the opportunity and happy to support how we can.
Great, Chris. Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, I have one going back to Scott's comment from AUVSI. If you're interested in what's going on in Texas, they host a North Texas UAS Safety and Integration Task Force. It's a monthly venue. It's well attended. I mean, upwards of 100 people maybe over that. But they host the discussions of what's going on in the area. They bring in companies to talk about what they're doing, other stakeholders, because to the gentleman who was talking before. Workforce development is going to be crucial in this area, identifying those key jobs that are going to be needed, and that demand signal, identifying that demand signal early. The other thing I would put out there in terms of potential use cases, there's been some studies done on the public good missions, because public good missions, we talk about in this space, you hear a lot about that crawl, walk, run approach, and you want to set those conditions early on. And the public good missions are really going to help accelerate not just the community acceptance, but also help validate the safety and the operational use cases. So when we talk about public good missions, those are the missions where there's no expectation of, say, a profit or a return, right? Because it's serving the public good. And unlike other modes of aviation, I think AAM is one of the critical linchpins is going to be that community public acceptance, right? Because we talk about noise, we talk about distractibility of drones operating in and around areas we don't normally see aircraft. Lessons learned from New Jersey when they were using drones to inspect their 200-foot tall high mast towers. They had people get into car accidents on the turnpike because they were distracted by the drone operations. So you also have the visual noise. That's going to be another issue. And then layer that in with people's concerns about privacy, security, and those types of issues. The community acceptance is really going to be crucial for this to take off.
So
Great. Yeah.
Randall, it's Linda Parkowski with Penn Economic Partnership. I'd be very interested to see if any of these types of vehicles were being used in the disaster in North Carolina or Tennessee. And if you could provide maybe some case studies about that, because I can't imagine that they wouldn't be using these types of vehicles, but the only thing that's publicized is helicopters and ATMs, or I mean ATVs, sorry about that. So I don't know if anybody on the call has information about that.
I can speak to that from a non-subject matter expert since I live in Charlotte. Yeah, drones were used, but it was mostly for surveillance and recognition and assessment of the areas as they then in turn directed the actual helicopters and other support equipment in there. But to my knowledge, that was the extent of it. And I know that because there are a few gentlemen that I know that are drone operators for colleges and universities that were tasked by FEMA to take their equipment up there and provide that service.
Survey.
As well as when Puerto Rico was hit by Maria a few years back, I think 2018, they did use drones for persistent coverage for airborne cell towers, basically flying drones that could essentially be repeaters, comms relay. When communications nodes are taken out, that was one use case. Another use case in disaster areas is wildfire operations. That's really a hot button topic in AAM because currently you can't intermix drone operations with fixed wing or manned operations, right? So the current, well, previously they'd have to go to ground if they had manned operations going, and that's just not conducive for fighting wildfires.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, this is CJ Charlton. I am the new director of aviation programs at Delaware State University. I'm an active United Airlines captain and active 130 pilot in the reserves. So I start my preface with, I drive buses. This is not my avenue, but my college colleague here has convinced me as I was entertaining it, this is an arena that we wanted to get into. And for everybody that's on the line, whether it's Delaware Department of Transportation, individual operators, the U.S. Air Force, the Guard or whatnot, where Delaware State University is going to jump into AAM, we are two ways, one for infrastructure, and the other, as I articulated in our meeting last week, we have already received funding from Barclays Bank and we're getting additional funding from the FAA. Delaware State University is going to build a virtual airport innovation laboratory with AR/VR capability. It will be a 25 station setup, dispersible because it's on a server. So we will have stations at multiple locations throughout the state. But what it's going to give us the ability to do is emulate all the airfields in the state of Delaware, both public and private. We can also emulate anything in the world. But the idea is we want to be the virtual test platform for all of your vehicles by which to test feasibility studies, research, probabilities, and the surveys and research that you do.
Is that at the campus or at the airport?
There will be a station. There will be multiple stations on campus, multiple stations at the airport, multiple stations at Shondell, up in Wilmington at our campuses, and now I have them looking at someplace down south. So the idea is, as I was discussing with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Herrera, that ultimately we are going to seek funding, both federal and private, to build a vertiport, a small scale vertiport right on the campus of Delaware State University, because we would be in the center of the state. So as we start to do things like just AAM routes and last mile package delivery, collaborating with Amazon and anybody else who the state of Delaware chooses to partner with, we are going to try and provide significant amount of the infrastructure for the physical placement of it. And that will be the evolution of our aviation program, in addition to our growth on the helicopter side and the airline and the fixed wing side.
We have 200 students.
Yeah, we have 200 students, and our 4-year goal is to grow we have 200 students total. We plan to grow the program to 450 in the next 5 years. Our pro pilot side will grow from 100 to 200, and the most amount of growth that we're anticipating is going to be on the non-flying in terms of butt in the seat side, AAM, drones, and then our helicopter program. So we are making this move and we want to be partners with everybody so you can articulate what your needs are so that we can tailor the equipment that we're purchasing to accommodate your needs as we go forward with feasibility research and all of that.
Aviation engineering needs to be one thing that you put into your.
I drive airplanes. So if you talk to me about what it is and he tells me how to incorporate it with on it, I'm more than happy to make it something we consider in the early
could
stages.
end up being a really a good aviation hub, but we're missing the engineering part here in the central part of the state.
I drive planes.
We are running a little bit short on time, so I want us to keep moving on to our next section, and we'll get to the stuff, and then we'll have time for more conversation at the end.
Okay, I find that very exciting that Del State is stepping up into that role, and it is. I mean, they're putting legs on some concepts here that's very impressive. In terms of the electric grid, we looked at those issues, and again, most of this was just research that was being done, but finding out who is responsible for what. There is a cooperative, and Delmarva Power, both of those serve the grid, and right now everything's the power is met. There are future needs, and when we looked at an eVTOL, it's said that 200 to 300 kilowatt hours per hour of flight is needed to power one of them. Compare that to an electric vehicle. Electric vehicle needs about 30 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So there is a forecast of a 30% increase in an electric demand over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we looked at, what would that mean for eVTOL aircraft if there is assumed to be 100 of those by 2030 operating in the state? Well, that's 125,000 kilowatt hours. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, let's say there's 100,000 of those on Delaware roads, that daily grid demand is, probably over 900,000 kilowatt hours. So this additional load is 1, gigawatt hour per day. This is a daily load. So, I think I read somewhere that the total in Delaware is in the daily use is in the 4,000 gigawatt range. So, it is significant. I'm sorry, the annual. Well, before I spout off on that, I got to get my facts straight. But the bottom line was this was a significant, it wasn't a small, insignificant amount of load that would be added. We looked at the example electric charging facilities for a vertiport. What do you need there? Well, you probably need 2 charging stations with 200 kilowatt hour output each. You need storage capacity of 5 megawatt hours. You need solar panels. If you're going to have solar panels, they need to be able to produce 500 kilowatt capacity. There's a grid connection that needs to be met as well, and some sort of smart grid integration. There's an airport. This is a picture of it, just basically off of Google Earth. So it might, these are always older pictures than what's really there. But what you're looking at, this is Cape Cod Gateway Airport in Massachusetts, and those are solar panels. I don't know if you can see those panels there. Those are solar panels. I believe they're going to grow that as well. And that forms a microgrid, that's basically located at the airport. So when the planning process, all of this takes time. It's said that to get a new power plant on board and certified is upwards of 7 years. And, so you have to plan now for what you're going to need. There's a process that goes through this. There is the Governor's Energy Advisory Council. There's DENREC, Division of Climate, Coastal and Energy. There's the Delaware Public Service Commission and the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. All of those have to coordinate on, bringing something, new online, and it takes time. That's the problem. It won't happen overnight. All right. So just with that short discussion, I'd like to open it up to get your all's input on it, on what your thoughts are on the electric grid.
Randall, this is Linda at KP. On
Yes.
the airports that had solar, do they still need additional demand from the grid, or are they self-sufficient? Do you know?
Are you talking about the Massachusetts airport?
Yes, the one
Yeah,
that picture.
they are that that grid supplements the existing grid, but it can power the airport, completely.
Okay. Thank you.
Someone mentioned that we probably ought to have somebody from the electrical side in on these discussions, and that's probably a good idea that we would reach out to, certainly in the future. Anyone else have comments on this?
I'm sorry, I do have one, Randall. Black and Veatch did an engineering study for NASA, and it's pretty detailed, in depth. If you want to dig into it, might be able to dig it up and send it to you, but it outlines by component cost per charging stall, from 1 to 6, I think, charging stalls, what the estimate would be. I think they said a 4-port charging stall would be upwards of maybe $1 million, 1.2, something like that. I'd have to go back and check. It's been a while since I looked at it, but there is a study that they did that was that identified and outlined all the costing of what would go into a charging station.
That's good. That's good. And in this next portion that we do, I've got some cost information as well for a potential vertiport, and it would include a charging station or two as well. Anybody else?
I just wanted to go back to the comment about having someone from the electric, industry. Was mentioned in the chat just a few seconds ago. Jeff Foreman, who is already part of our group as an airport operator, is now part of the Delaware Electric Co-op on the board. So he would be able to speak on behalf of that.
You need Delmarva Power.
Oh, no, of course. He has that perspective as well now. So he would be an added voice from that stance.
Okay. Excellent. Anybody else?
Chris Kelly here again from Delaware Prosperity Partnership. One of our jobs again is to respond to site selector RFIs from competitive projects. And when you see the energy demands for these potential new projects, new businesses coming into Delaware, they're astounding. This increase in demand is just part of the picture. If you're looking at some national data on this topic, the electricity demand, especially with AI, data centers, it's just growing at an exponential rate. So it's something to be conscientious of across the board, that our system is, we can't win certain projects at this rate because of the demands that are currently facing our system. And I'm sure Linda's seeing this as well with Ken Economic Partnership, but it's something we have to be conscientious of a state and pursue ways to grow that capacity.
Chris, you're absolutely right. And what Randall alluded to is the time that it takes. And the business model right now for the electric companies is you have to have an end user that's going to be able to pay back for the infrastructure that they're, laying out. There's no incentive to put the infrastructure in so that we can have the demand requirements for these companies that are coming in. So the business model is kind of what is challenging for us right now.
Well, and you see Google and Amazon Web Services and them all looking into nuclear and these mini nuclear power plants that are certainly on the drawing board. But it's interesting that, for example, all of our aircraft carriers, I think there's 11 or 13, something like that. They are all nuclear powered. And those are mobile power plants that can power a city of 100,000. And so, the concept works. It's just a question of does it work for civilian purposes? So anyway, that moving on. We any other before we get into the infrastructure, any other comments there? Okay. For the infrastructure needs, we talked about, the vertiport landing areas and, where those should be, what the costs are, and some case studies as well. Going to FAA, this is, sort of their guidance right now in, how the takeoff and landing pads and safety areas would be. There's a touchdown and liftoff area, which is the smallest. The FATO, which is the area around that, and then there's a safety area around all of it, and so it's roughly three diameters of the rotor that's used for that vehicle. So if you have a 50-foot, rotor with, which is fairly large, you're talking a minimum of a half an acre to accommodate that. And of course, if you have other amenities, passenger terminal, parking, maintenance facilities, storage, whatever, I mean, it could be up to 5 acres. So you would have that, perhaps the charging stations. There might be some air traffic control systems, and the rest of it would be optional. We talked about, starting out at airports. Where would those go? Well, you'd find an apron area and then possibly put that, near an apron. This is directly from the guidance that came out of the FAA manual, or it's an engineering report actually, but I think they're looking to finalize that by December. And so this is the, how they've sort of laid it out. What would the cost be? Well, looking in Delaware, depending location, how much does an acre cost? Well, it depends upon where it is. Construction, the site prep, the pavement, technology, and so forth. Technology can add, $500,000, to the cost. So we were looking at the total cost of, basically $1 million to $4 million, essentially, depending upon where it's located. I mean, that just is very rough order of magnitude. And, for people who are trying to envision, what is this going to take, going forward? The case studies, well, Lilium and Ferrovial in Florida, they were developing 10 vertiports down there. So if that gets interrupted, that's going to be interesting. But, Miami, Los Angeles, DFW, they've got things going on. And there's also international things going as well, in different countries. But thought I would just open that up right for discussion here before we move on.
Randall, this is Bob Bryant. That $1 million to $4 million cost, is that per single landing pad?
It's the single is probably, $1 million. And if you get larger than that, and have multiple landing pads, you're starting to get up to the $4 million range. So we just assumed that million would incorporate a charging station, paving, and site prep. You have to buy the thing possibly, and so forth.
From an airport operator's perspective, the charging station, I'd be curious to know if recharging vehicles can be performed by a mobile type of vehicle that's plugged in, recharged at the main charging station, similar to how a fuel farm works at an airport today, where the fuel is pumped into a truck and the truck takes the fuel to the aircraft. It'd be interesting to see if a mobile charging truck can park into the primary charging station, and then the truck be transported to the unit or to the aircraft and charge the unit or charge the aircraft pretty much anywhere on the airport. Just an operational thought.
Yeah. And again, I'm not well versed enough to know, but it would be very convenient and good to do that. It's just a question of whether or not, that much electricity can be, transported without, fixed facilities, and if there's arcing, you don't want anything to arc, anywhere, that you are. So, but I'm not an expert, but that is something we could look into.
Be interesting.
Any other comments? All right. The final area that was the final area. Never mind. The next steps that we are looking at is someone brought up the idea of looking at what's going on environmentally with these, the noise, the public acceptance, the safety, and so forth. And identify, another area that we want to look at is the potential workforce development impacts of AAM in Delaware. And, that would, again, it would be great to work with Del State on that. And, can you attract, manufacturing? Can you attract maintenance, operational, secondary services, and so forth? And then finally, we want to look at the state level policy and funding options. In other words, at least from our perspective, from the state's perspective, DelDOT's perspective, what does it mean to them? How does it affect their regulatory actions? Can they put out any incentives to get manufacturers in Delaware? What about funding vertiports? And then, of course, land use compatibility planning, things like that need to be done to ensure that, there's a success and not, a conflict that's set up when you actually start to implement this. So those are at least what we're looking for. And we're open to, if anybody wants to add to this list, we're open to doing the research and then bringing it back and letting everybody talk about it. Any comments on this?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Speaking to this, and I'll provide the information on December 3rd and 4th, the vendor that is going to be the primary project lead for the virtual airport lab for Del State is coming from Texas to do 2 days of site survey conversations, what it called thinking design workshop. So if this is something that we're talking about, and it kind of lends directly to what I was saying about putting rubber to the pavement. I will make it available for you to join us when we have the thinking design session, so you can give that input, so we can take it back to be part of what they ultimately try and put together for us as far as a proposal.
That's awesome. Yeah, we would definitely be interested in that. And also, just so that everyone knows, one of the things that we'll do is, we'll transcribe this meeting. We'll take stuff that came out of it, add it to what, to the paper trail and the documentation of what we've been doing, and before we move into the next, series of steps. So I can only say this is extremely valuable for us. And, we might even, want to get back with some of the individuals here. I hope that there is a record, that Austin has of whoever's here, and that we can contact you if we need to, just to, maybe get some more information or clarify some things. That would be very awesome.
Randall, I think on your next steps, you still need to keep the electricity on there. Like, that's
Okay.
not gonna go away unless we address it.
Okay, excellent.
And Randall, one additional point, I would underscore the importance of doing very early on the stakeholder identification and stakeholder mapping.
Okay.
What I found working with the community I'm working with in Ohio as their consultants, we started out with 2 champions in the area, international airport director and a economic development person. And we expanded that list through our work over the course of 2 years to over 30 different stakeholders from the local, state, as well as federal levels. Okay, so that's going to be crucial, because there's people out there who don't even know they're stakeholders in this, that need to be identified early and engaged often.
Yes. Excellent. No, that's exactly right. You're exactly right. Well, this is good. This has given us a great deal to consider, think about, digest, and put, back into action. What we want to do ultimately is come out with a meaningful set of recommendations, not just observations about what's going on, but also, what can the state do to help, move the ball along, and or get out in front of, something that is actually coming, regardless of whether they're ready or not.
Great. And just so everyone knows, I'll share all the recording and transcript and all that information with you shortly. So you'll have access to that information. And those of you that I said I would connect with other individuals and make sure you have that information. This is a public meeting, so I have to ask, are there any members of the public online that would like to chime in or comment? Okay, does not seem so. So unless anyone else has anything, I think we can wrap up.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.